The wind beyond the wall was sharper than any blade Arya Stark had ever held. It sliced through her layers of ragged fur and froze her very breath in the air. Her fingers were numb, her lips cracked. She hadn't spoken in days, not since she'd wandered alone past Eastwatch. She was supposed to head to Braavos. That was her plan. But grief had plans of its own. She had lost everything. Her father's head was taken before a cheering crowd. Her mother's throat was slit at a feast. Her brother King Robb betrayed and butchered like cattle. And Sansa? Last she heard, Sansa was trapped in a viper's nest at King's Landing. Arya had no family, only names, a list, and a soul soaked in vengeance. She hadn't meant to stray so far, but her hate had whispered louder than reason. Find power, it said. Find death and use it. So she walked north, chasing the edge of the world. That's when the snow turned blue. Not white, blue. The sky darkened at once. No clouds, no storm, just a sudden absence of warmth. The air grew impossibly still. Arya's horse collapsed beneath her with a final soft grunt. Its breath missed it once. Then it was still. That was when she saw them. Silhouettes. Quiet. Standing in rows like tombstones come to life. Dozens. Hundreds. Eyes glowing like frozen stars. Then one stepped forward. He did not speak, but she knew his name before he even reached her. The Night King. His presence froze the marrow in her bones. She tried to reach for Needle, but her hand refused to move. Her body was not her own, but her mind, her fire still burned. She locked eyes with him, defiant, silent, and then something strange happened. He didn't kill her. He came closer, his fingers extended toward her face. And in that second of contact, the world disappeared. Her past was laid bare. Her list echoed in the cold void of her thoughts. Cersei, Ilyn Payne, the Mountain, Melisandre, Walder Frey. The Night King didn't need words. His offer was carved into the silence between them. I can give you the power to kill them all. And Arya, in that frozen moment, did not run, did not fight. She listened, because revenge was all she had left. He touched her chest. A searing cold crawled through her body like a living frostbite. She collapsed, breathless, but she didn't die. She woke in darkness, a cave carved from ice. She didn't feel the cold anymore. She didn't feel much of anything, except her heartbeat slowing, and then vanishing. When she rose, she saw her reflection in the ice. Her eyes were still gray, but behind them, something else stirred. No longer Arya Stark of Winterfell, no longer no one. Now she belonged to the night. She moved without sound now. Not like before, when Arya Stark had crept through castle halls and twisted alleys, clumsy and hungry. This was something else. The silence wasn't a trick anymore. It was a part of her, like her bones had learned to hush. Days? Weeks? She didn't know how long she trained beneath the Night King's shadow. Time was dead here, buried beneath miles of ancient snow. But she remembered the lessons. Not spoken, never spoken. The White Walkers had no tongues for language, only gestures, movements, the cold logic of survival. She watched them fight, watched them kill, watched them rise again. She became like them, but not fully. Unlike them, she remembered names. And she dreamed. At night, when the dead around her stood like statues in the dark, Arya closed her eyes and saw her list burning in her mind, every name edged with blue flame. One by one, over and over. Cersei, Ilyn Payne, Melisandre, Walder Frey. Even the Hound's name still echoed sometimes, softer now, confused. But in her dream, she always stood alone. Even her siblings, Sansa, Bran, were blurred out like faded memories. Sometimes she heard their voices calling from the snow, but the Night King would always appear before she could answer. And he would nod. Her past was a fading ember. Her future, a blade of ice. One night, she was summoned to the center of the frozen lake that lay silent beneath the moon. The wind did not touch it. The stars reflected off its glassy surface, and she saw herself walking toward something buried beneath the ice. It was Needle, but different. The blade shimmered with veins of frost, a gift, forged from the icy steel of the first men's forgotten graves, dipped in the breath of the Night King himself. It was hers now. Needle was small, but death didn't. Need to be big? He nodded again. No words. She understood. It was time to return. But not as Arya, not as a wolf. She was the cold whisper of vengeance. The Night King sent a small host with her, silent, swift. They traveled beneath the crust of the snow, moving like wind through cracks and caverns. And when she crossed back over the wall under a moonless sky, she knew no one would see her coming. Eastwatch had already fallen by then. Her eyes scanned the horizon, and her breath no longer misted. She didn't need warmth anymore, only purpose. That purpose came into sharp focus the moment she stood before the burning ruins of an inn near the Trident. Scavengers picked through the ashes. One of them laughed about how the Freys used to own the place before that wedding turned red. She didn't blink. The scavengers were dead before their mouths could finish their curses. One name scratched. Off the Lisnock Walder, but close enough to start. She moved on. Each kill was silent, cold, unseen, but rumors began to spread. A girl with gray eyes. A blade of frozen steel. Whole groups of soldiers found with blue frost blooming on their lips. No blood, just stillness, just terror. They called her the Wraith of Winter. And deep in King's Landing, Cersei Lannister began to dream of snow. King's Landing had never known true winter. Even when the cold winds blew from the north, the capital remained stubborn warmth, clung to its stones like arrogance to the crown. But now something felt wrong. The air was colder than it should have been. Birds flew south earlier. Rats abandoned cellars as if fleeing something older than men. And Queen Cersei, self-crowned and surrounded by schemers, started sleeping with fire burning in every room. She didn't admit fear not out loud, but she felt it. In her bones, in her dreams. Arya moved through the Riverlands like a rumor. She didn't hide. She let whispers carry her. That was the point. Fear was part of the weapon now. Each time a name died, word reached the next name. At the twins, she returned not to gloat, but to finish. Walder Frey was dead by her own hand once, but his sons lived. His legacy poisoned the waters. Arya didn't speak when she found them. She simply watched, waited. One by one, they died. Choking on frost. No poison, no tricks. Just the air around them turning colder until their hearts stopped beating. Even the walls of the twins began to crack under the unnatural ice that bloomed from within. She moved on. Her skin did not change like a faceless man, but her presence made men doubt what they saw. She could stand in a crowd, and no one would. Look twice, not because she was hiding, but because something deep inside them screamed, "Do not look at her." Cersei's spies finally caught sight of her near Harrenhal, a lone figure walking beneath the broken towers, pale as a ghost. She didn't run when they chased her. She didn't need to. The bodies were found the next morning, faces twisted, skin pale, eyes frozen solid, staring at nothing. That was the moment Qyburn came to Cersei's chambers, more shaken than usual. "My queen," he said, his voice tight, "we may be facing a creature not bound by death." Cersei waved him off. "We've faced worse. but her hand gripped the armrest of the Iron Throne just a little tighter. Arya came closer. With each step south, she let more of herself go. The warmth, the laughter, the fleeting joy of family. These were weaknesses now. Chains. She didn't cry anymore when she remembered her father's execution. Didn't flinch when she thought of Rob's corpse, or of her mother's lifeless body floating in the darkness. Pain had melted into ice. Still, sometimes ... a whisper. Jon's face, Sansa's laughter, Rand's silent stare. But then the Night King would return to her mind, reminding her of her purpose, of the pact, of what she had become. Her heart beat only for vengeance now, and that meant King's Landing. She reached the capital under nightfall, not by gate, not by tunnel, but through the dreams of a dying raven. She moved through the city like smoke, and on the first night, the fire in Cersei's bedroom went out, just for a moment, just long, enough to feel the cold crawl across her spine, just long enough to hear the faintest whisper, Valor Morbulis. The silence in the Red Keep was unnatural that night, not just quiet dead. Even the guards sensed it. Their footsteps echoed louder, their armor felt heavier. Every torch flame flickered as though gasping for breath, and no one could explain why. Cersei Lannister hadn't slept, not truly. Since that night, the fire vanished and came back without a sound. She'd been watching the corners of her chambers like a hunted animal. Qyburn brought her every tool he had, wildfire charms, ancient scrolls from Valyria, sigils drawn in blood useless. She dismissed them one by one. Fear made her crueler. Shyong was gone. Tyrion was the enemy. And now, something colder than war was walking toward her throne. Arya stood atop the rooftops of Flea Bottom, watching the smoke from the chimneys curl up into the black sky. Her breath no longer showed. Her skin had paled to a deathly tone, and her eyes had grown darker still gray, but sharper now. Steel gray, soulless gray. The Night King's influence had carved its place inside her, but it hadn't taken everything. Somewhere, deep in the walls of her mind, Arya Stark still lived. She didn't speak her name aloud. She didn't need to. But sometimes the memories slipped through light when she looked at a small girl clinging to her mother in the market, and something pulled at her heart. The girl looked like what Arya once was. Small, quiet, angry. But Arya was no child anymore. She leapt down from the rooftops without sound, landing among shadows. Her blade was hidden, though it hardly mattered. She could kill without it now. The Night King had taught her to drain heat from a man's body with just a touch, to slow a heartbeat with a stare. But she still carried needle. For the list, for the names. That night, she entered the Red Keep. Not through tunnels, not by disguise. Through the very frost creeping beneath the walls. Qyburn was the first to see her. He opened the door to his laboratory and found her standing there as if she'd always been. Her face blank, her eyes unreadable. You, he started, trembling. You're not supposed to be real. She tilted her head. Then he froze, not out of fear but literally. His breath stopped in his throat as the air turned to ice around him. His eyes went wide, and a slow crack split across his face. A moment later, he shattered like glass on stone. Arya stepped over the pieces. Next was the mountain. The monster. The butcher. She remembered him from the lists. Gregor Clegane. He towered over her in the throne room corridor, a looming beast in black armor. But Arya didn't slow. She walked straight toward him. He swung his massive blade, once, twice, but each time she was already gone. Moving like a whisper of death, he landed one blow. It cut her shoulder deep. She didn't bleed. She looked at him, eyes like winter storms. Then she touched his exposed throat. The mountain dropped to his knees. And for the first time in years, he screamed. Inside her, something stirred. Not satisfaction, not joy, just ... The click of another name, falling off the list. She stepped over his smoldering corpse and moved on. At last, she reached the queen's chamber. The guards outside were gone, some fled, some dead. The door creaked open without her touch. She stepped inside. Circe stood alone, no crown. Number, armor, just wine and fear. So, Circe said, voice shaking but defiant, you've come to kill me like the rest. Arya didn't speak. I remember you now. The little wolf. Ned Stark's runt. A pause. Arya blinked once. And the air turned cold. Circe felt her breath catch. The wine in her cup turned to slush. You think killing me fixes anything? She snapped. The world is built on blood, girl. You're just another monster trying to make sense of it. Arya stepped forward. Needle shimmered with frost in her hand. You made the list, Arya whispered at last. Her voice was hollow, like the grave. And as she raised the blade, Circe saw her reflection in the ice. Not a girl, a ghost. The Iron Throne sat quiet, cloaked in shadows and a thin veil of frost. Circe's body lay crumpled at its base, her skin pale as parchment, her lips frozen mid-curse. Her eyes once burning with venom now glassed over in terror, wide open, forever staring at nothing. Arya stood over her for a long while, needle still dripping with ice. She felt no victory, just stillness. The list was shorter now, much shorter, but not empty. Outside the chamber, the Red Keep was chaos. Word spread fast. The queen is dead. Some claimed dragons returned. Others swore a shadow killed her. But those who'd heard the rumors, who remembered the girl with the list, started whispering again. She's back. She's not human anymore. She's working for the dead. Arya moved through the keep like a ghost, unseen and untouched. Her eyes scanned the walls of the old stone like they were maps. She wasn't looking for escape. She was waiting. And then she heard it. The sound of boots. Familiar. Heavy. Steady. Not the clatter of panicked Lannister guards. No, this was Northmen. And among them his voice. Jon Snow. He entered the hall with Sir Davos and a small guard of Winterfell men, all breathing heavy from the long ride south. They'd heard of Circe's death, rushed to the capital hoping to stop whoever or whatever was behind it. When Jon saw Arya, his breath caught. She was barely recognizable. Her face was hers, but her skin, it looked untouched by warmth. Her eyes weren't dead, but they weren't alive either. They were still, cold, piercing. He took a step forward. Arya, he said quietly. She blinked. She remembered him, his voice, his kindness. The half-brother, who'd given her needle, who'd never lied to her. He wasn't on the list. He never had been. But she didn't answer. Jon came closer. What have you done? She was on the list, Arya said, her voice like wind over ice. Jon's face twisted in pain. What have you become? She made me this way, she said softly, nodding at the corpse. Her, the ones before her, the world. I did what it took. Davos stepped forward, warily. You've got ice in your blood, girl. We saw what you did to those guards outside. That's not justice. That's something else. I'm what justice becomes when the world doesn't care anymore, Arya said. Jon shook his head. You're not a killer, Arya. You were never meant to be this. She stared at him. The part of her that was still Stark flinched. But another part, the deeper part, was silent. The Night King's voice whispered in the wind outside. You have one name left, Jon. It was never on the list. But now, With the last fire of her family standing before her, the Night King pushed his will into her veins. Cold, commanding. She raised needle. Jon didn't move. Then, "Kill me," he said, arms open. "If that's who you are now? If I'm next, do it." Arya stared. Needle trembled. And for the first time since crossing the wall, she hesitated. The Night King's hold cracked. A memory surged Jon, handing her the blade that started it all, telling her to stick them with the pointy end, her laughing. His hand on her shoulder. Her heart, once frozen, flickered. "No," she whispered. She dropped needle. The frost in the throne room seemed to shatter with the sound. The chill lifted. And somewhere in the north, the Night King screamed. Not in rage, but in fear. The wind in the north howled louder than ever before. Not natural wind, no. This was something deeper. It came from the ground, the sky, the bones of the old world. When Arya dropped needle, the pact was broken. And the Night King felt it. He stood atop the shattered battlements of Eastwatch by the sea, his cloak of shadows billowing behind him. The cold around him pulsed like a heartbeat. His generals stood still, waiting, watching, but he did not move. For the first time in 1,000 years, he was uncertain. Arya Stark, his cold blade of vengeance, had cracked. He had carved her soul from grief, forged her with silence, sharpened her with death. But in the end, the boy Jon Snow had unraveled it all with nothing but memory. Family, a spark of what she used to be. The Night King raised one hand. Ice cracked across the land like veins of rage. Arya felt it before anyone else did. She stood in the Red Keep ruins, the frost still fading around her. Jon had embraced her cautious, confused but grateful. Davos watched from a distance, hand on his blade, unsure whether she was still a threat. Then the wind returned, not a breeze. A warning. Arya turned north. "I broke it," she whispered. Jon heard the change in her voice. "What do you mean?" "I told him no," she said. "I dropped the blade. That was the oath. The bond. He's coming now. Not for Westeros. Not for Winterfell." She looked into Jon's eyes. "For me." Outside, the city dimmed. Clouds devoured the moonlight. The stars vanished. Davos stepped toward the balcony and froze. Gods! The sea had turned black. Not with water, but with movement. Figures. Thousands. Tens of thousands. An army of the dead, marching on King's Landing. Arya's presence had drawn them. A signal. A betrayal. The Night King did not lose things, he reclaimed them. And now he was coming to take her back. Permanently. Jon ran to the keep's tower and lit the signal fire. Dragon's Dennery's last remaining scouts circled in the distance, waiting for the call. They had been hesitant to fight in the south again, but this wasn't politics anymore. This was survival. As the fire lit the sky, Arya stood beneath it, still as stone. She could feel the cold clawing inside her chest again. The part of her that belonged to the Night King stirred, pulled by ancient thread. "He's close," she murmured. "Too close." "We'll stop him," Jon said, drawing Longclaw. Arya looked at him, sadness in her eyes. "You can't." Then she turned and ran, not away, toward the coming storm. She didn't explain, didn't say goodbye, because Arya knew this wasn't a battle. It was a reckoning. If she stayed, thousands would die. If she fled, the dead would chase her alone. She could feel him inside her, tracking her heartbeat like a wolf sniffs blood. So she did the only thing she could. She ran straight into the dark, back to where it all began, back to the north, back to the Night King. The north greeted her not with snow, but silence. A silence so thick it felt alive. Arya raced across the frozen rivers, past the ruins of old keeps and forgotten towns buried in white. Her feet barely left prints. She was faster now, lighter, but not because of strength, because death was chasing her, and it had made her its own. Every mile north peeled back a layer of her old self, the child who chased cats in Winterfell, the girl who whispered names in the dark, even the killer forged by the faceless men. All of it burned away under the breath of the Night King, and still she ran. She reached the edge of the haunted forest by dawn, though the sky never truly brightened. Just a sickly gray that lingered overhead, like the sun itself was afraid to look down. Ghosts walked here, not White's ghosts of memory. Arya saw them in the corners of her vision. Ned Stark standing in the snow, his eyes proud but sad. Robb, blood-soaked and smiling. Her mother, arms outstretched, whispering for her to come home. But they weren't real. They were the Night King's final weapon. Guilt. She shook them off, kept moving. But by dusk, she reached the Weeping Ridge, and there he waited, not hidden, not ambushing, just standing in the center of the clearing, like he had always been there. The Night King, blue eyes glowing like the heart of winter itself. His armor gleamed with frost. His crown of ice shimmered in the pale light. Arya stepped forward, heart pounding in a strange rhythm. Not fear, not anger, resolve. "You came for me?" she said. He didn't speak. He never did. But she heard him all the same. "You were mine. You broke the bond. You return now to kneel or die." Arya drew needle. The blade glowed faintly with the frost it had tasted, but her hands were steady. She didn't need a long sword. Needle was never about power. It was about memory, and that was her edge. The Night King raised one hand. The forest moaned, and then they came. The dead, pouring from the trees like a black tide. Thousands of them. Eyes burning, hands clawing, jaws snapping. An avalanche of death. Arya did not run. She closed her eyes for just 1 second, saw Jon's face, Sansa's smile, Bran's silence, Gendry's hands. Then she whispered to herself, "I am Arya Stark of Winterfell." And she ran straight into the dead. They fell like wheat before her. Needle sang through the air, each strike precise. Every movement was the perfect blend of assassin and ghost. Cold poured from her, but she was no longer drowning in it. She was wielding it. She moved like death, yes, but now it was her weapon, not her master. She cut through 10, 20, 50, and then the forest cracked. A shriek pierced the sky. Dragons, Venaries had come. Above the trees, Dragon unleashed fire and fury. The sky lit up in red. Fire clashed with ice in the most ancient war known to the world. But Arya barely noticed. She had reached the center again. She stood face to face with the Night King. No army now. No witnesses. Just them. She raised Needle. He raised his frozen blade. Their clash was not loud. It was silent. Steel met ice, and the world seemed to pause. He struck hard. She dodged low. He was faster, stronger, but she was smarter. And for the first time, she spoke his name aloud, the only name she had never put on the list. "I kill you for me, not for anyone else." And then she vanished, not gone shifted. Not like a faceless man, but like mist. She appeared behind him, and this time her blade found the crack. Needle slipped under his ribs, straight into where a heart once lived. The Night King did not scream. He simply shattered, like a mirror breaking under truth. The army stopped, froze, and then collapsed. Arya stood alone again, just a girl, covered in ice, holding a sword too small for the burden it had carried. The wind over Winterfell carried no scent that morning, just the cold Not cruel, not violent, just cold. The kind that settles after something terrible has ended. The kind of cold that doesn't bite, but reminds. Reminds you that you're still alive. That not everyone made it. Arya returned alone. Not as a hero. Not as a savior. Just a shadow walking home. Jon waited at the gates when she appeared, his black cloak whipping in the breeze. He had felt it the moment the Night King died. Everyone had. The strange pressure in the air vanished. Fires burned more easily again. The snow softened. The war was over. But Jon looked at Arya, and he didn't smile. Because what stood before him wasn't just his sister. It was something changed. Her eyes were the same gray and sharp, but quieter now. Not calm, hollow, like a blade after the war is done, dulled by too much blood. He stepped forward. "You did it," he said. Arya didn't nod, didn't speak. She simply walked past him, into the courtyard of their childhood, where the snow had always felt safe once. Sansa came down the stairs slowly. Her face was unreadable. "You should be dead," she whispered. Arya looked up at her. "I was, for a while." The words hung there. No one knew what to say next. They brought her inside, gave her warmth. She didn't ask for. A fire she didn't sit near. Food she didn't touch. She stared at the flames like they were lying to her. Eventually, Bran found her beneath the weirwood tree. The godswood was quiet. The red leaves fluttered in soft rhythm, like a slow breath. "I saw what you did," he said. "I know," she replied. "You killed the Night King. You saved the living." Arya said nothing. Bran turned his head slightly. "But you also walked with death, slept in its silence, let it sharpen you." "I became what I had to," she whispered. Bran blinked slowly. "And now?" Arya looked at him. "Now I don't know what I am." The silence between them was not empty. It was filled with things too big to name. She stayed at Winterfell. For a while, no one dared question her. Not even the Mesters, not the Bannermen. People whispered, of course. The girl who killed death. The Wolf who walked with the cold. The one who broke the curse. But no one approached. Not really. Not even Gendry, who had ridden north the moment he heard. He stood beside her in the training yard one evening, holding 2 wooden swords. "Come." "On," he smiled gently. "Just like old times." Arya took the sword. They sparred. He landed no blows. When it was done, he looked into her eyes and saw something he couldn't understand. "Where do you go now?" he asked. She stared north. Further. "There's nothing left north of the wall." "There's always something." "You can stay. You're safe now." Arya gave the smallest smile. "I'm not built for safe." And so, one morning, before even the ravens stirred, Arya Stark of Winterfell saddled a horse. She carried no banners. No companions, just needle. Jon watched her from the battlements, hands gripping the stone. "Be careful," he called. Arya looked up, her voice soft. "I'm always careful." She turned away and vanished into the trees. Her tracks faded behind her before noon. Some say she went to find what lay beyond the maps. Others say she was chasing whispers of magic too, old to sleep forever. Some even believe she'll return when the world forgets how to fight for itself again. But no one knows, not truly. Because Arya Stark was not a queen, not a knight, not even a hero. She was a name spoken in silence, a ghost of winter. And she walked alone, forever beyond the list, forever beyond the wall.